In this video, I'm going to walk you through my build of the Mars Industries 1/18 scale Airwolf helicopter. If you can tell from the title, I'm not thrilled with the product I received from them for a variety of reasons which I will address. First off, full disclosure, this is my personal and professional opinion and review of the product, nothing more. And yes, I said professional as well. I've been a prop and model kit designer and maker for over 17 years, so I'm not talking out of my butt here. So if you weren't aware, this project was funded via Kickstarter in 2021. I heard about it by chance on a popular YouTube channel that had a completed and assembled kit in hand. From what I could tell, it looked awesome and had a clever use of magnets to allow the canopy to be removed in two sections as well as the rotors and tail boom. It was pricey, but I loved Airwolf as a kid, and having one that could fit 3 3/4 action figures would be a dream come true. What the heck, I'll back it. Now, you could buy the kit or one that's been put together for you. Considering I know my own capabilities and there was a large price difference, I went with the kit. Well, as with most crowd-funded projects, this wasn't going to ship the next week or anything. I've run crowdfunds before and understand the complexity and challenges. I'm fine waiting as long as what I get is done properly. Wait, I did. But when I received the kit in hand, was it done properly? That would be a big no. Shall we get into it? First thing I noticed was that some of the parts were 3D printed in resin and others in filament. Except for the weight considerations, why not just print them all in the high-quality resin if you had the capability? More baffling was that some of the parts that required the finest quality were done in filament. So I began to take the parts out of the box, and I noticed that all the parts that have been printed in resin are sticky. Now, for those that don't know, resin prints need washed very well and then cured. If done correctly, the parts should not be tacky at all. Certainly not to the point where the packing peanuts are sticking to the parts. So first, I'm going to have to do a thorough cleaning myself. I started laying all the parts out and immediately see that the print for the tail rotor is defective. This is quite obvious, and if proper attention was being paid, never should have been shipped to a customer. Other quality issues were spotted. The block the engine sits on is crooked for some reason. Now, this isn't a big deal because you won't see it when assembled, but it's there. A couple gauge clusters were filament printed, and they don't appear to have come out correctly. Note that these gauges were quite obviously resin printed in the photos on the Kickstarter campaign. The tail wings were also filament printed, which is fine, except that the top edge is coming apart. Obviously, some sort of error, a bad print, but never should have gone out to a customer this way. Let's take a look at the control sticks, which were resin printed. You can see how they appear to melt. This is because they were not properly supported. This is a rookie mistake, and once again, never should have shipped that way. And just like those as seen on TV commercials, but wait, there's more. The tail boom and the two halves of the removable canopy were sized just a little bit off. They were not printed at the same scale. Also, the two halves of the main body had this ladder-like detail that veered off to one side a bit. Now, having never looked underneath one of these helicopters closely in real life, for all I know this is correct, though I suspect otherwise. So I get an email from Mars, they apparently won, about the wrongly scaled body parts, and said that they would just send everyone replacements. Good on them. So I replied that I had several other parts that needed replaced, and never heard back. Now I'm waiting to receive the replacement fuselage parts, and in the meantime, never received replacements for all the other defective parts. Finally, I got frustrated, contacted Mars, and just said, look, I want refunded, I can ship you back the kit. No answer. Now, one way or another, it's up to the business to make it right. So after months go by and another request is ignored, I received the fuselage replacement. No sign of the other parts I needed replaced. Also, along with this is new landing gear. Apparently the design was changed or incorrectly done the first time. I don't know. Oh, but things just keep getting better. So finally, I can start putting the main body together. First, we have these two resin printed bits that go on the front ends on the side pylons. I glued them on what looked correct, but realized they were on the wrong side. They weren't labeled left or right, and sort of looked okay on either side until you line it up with the pieces that go behind them. So I got a razor blade in there and cut through the glue, and the brittle resin breaks. Now, I believed that these parts were solid, but they weren't. They were printed completely hollow. Another thing to be aware of with resin printed parts is if you make a fully hollow part without some sort of vent hole, it will encapsulate uncured resin. These parts did not have such a vent hole. Upon breaking, the resin splashes all over my workspace, luckily not getting on any of my clothes. So, I'm sure there are others out there that may end up with completed models just full of uncured resin inside. The silly part is these parts don't even need vent holes. The entire one side could have been open, and it never would have been visible once assembled. Oh, side note, the replacement tail boom I get did have vent holes, but apparently was not washed well enough because that oozed resin all over on a shelf it was sitting on. No damage except for a stain in the wood, thankfully. Now that another problem is fixed, another one will rise to the occasion. I take a look at the two canopy pieces and something seems off. Well, the magnet should help align everything, right? Well, first take a look at how close to the edge the magnet pockets are, and they still need dremeled out because they were too small. This was very poor designing. Resin prints are brittle. You never, ever give so little tolerance that you have paper-thin areas like this. So, I'm starting with the rear canopy part. I have the magnets installed, and the rear wall needs dremeled away a bit because, once again, there wasn't enough clearance given in the design. With that material being removed, things could shift a bit. However, what's with this huge gap between the canopy and the body? Also, the lower ends of the canopy don't align. They rest apart too much. This could have been solved simply by moving the magnets down to the ends. Once again, poor design. Now, let's see how the front canopy aligns. Nope, that has odd gaps as well. The two magnets aren't sufficient to force it into shape. Did I say two magnets? Well, the front magnet pocket was missing any place to glue it down, so I first had to make my own. Now there are two magnets, which didn't fix the alignment issues at all. So now what? Well, time to get crazy. I'm going to permanently glue the two canopies together. That will eliminate how much can move around. But the gaps, these horrible, enormous gaps, that's where I'm going to be making some serious shims. After that, a lot of putty work. And maybe adding some glue to reinforce the cracked canopy. Now, it's as good as it's going to get. I've now got it to the minimum quality it should have been. And the sides that flared out? Well, no better solution than to make a plastic beam and glue it to each side to keep it where it's supposed to be. Now at this point, I believe the worst is behind me. But that doesn't mean the party is over. The night is still young. Check out the continuing turd polishing adventure in Part 2.